Hello, my name is Alkveina and I am a PhD student at Queen Mary University of London. In this video, I'll be talking about a self-adaptive rolling horizon evolutionary algorithm for general video game playing, talk based on a paper published at the IEEE Conference on Games 2020. To quickly unpack the title, rolling horizon evolutionary algorithms are algorithms which use concepts from evolution to evolve action plans while playing games. Self-adaptive refers to the algorithm modifying its parameters while playing games in order to improve its structure as well as the action sequences. And general video game playing is the domain concerned with creating artificial players able to play any game possible. This work was done in collaboration with some wonderful colleagues from Maastricht University. And to give a quick overview of the video, we're looking first at some background on general video game playing to contextualize the work. Then I'll go over how our rolling horizon evolutionary algorithm works and its parameter space that we are concerned with in this work, as well as the parameter optimizers used for this study. Lastly, we'll look at the results obtained, some interesting insights, and a few ways in which this work can be extended further. Let's dive in! This work is within the domain of general video game playing. We've seen a lot in recent media of very good AI players in Go, Dota or StarCraft. And while these are very impressive advancements, those players would have a very hard time picking up a new game. Therefore, we're looking instead at highly adaptive general players that are able to take any game given to them and act intelligently in that environment. We're using General Video Game AI, or GVGAI, for our benchmark, which contains over 160 games and proposes many different challenges for AI methods, from playing games by playing without seeing the game previously, learning how to play the game by repeatedly playing them and gathering experience, or even playing two-player games, generating levels, or generating rules for the games. In this particular work, we're focused on the single-player planning track, but you can find out more about the framework and competition in the book mentioned at the bottom of the screen. We use a subset of 20 games from the GVGA corpus with various features. All are listed on the right, with some highlighted that will be mentioned more in this discussion. A breakdown of all their features can be found in the paper cited at the bottom, and all games can be found and played from the GVGA framework itself. For our experiments, we used all 5 levels of each game, with 20 runs per level, giving 100 runs per game, and results and statistics will be presented averaged over all runs in a game. Within this larger domain, we look at rolling horizon evolutionary algorithms, which have been shown to achieve high performance on a range of games, beating the previous state of the art. The algorithm runs at every game tick and begins with a population of individuals, where each individual, or row in this diagram, is a random sequence of actions to be played in the game. We can call this initial population P0. We then evaluate each individual using a copy of the game state observation, so what the agent sees in the game, and a forward model, which allows to simulate the effect of actions without actually playing them. The game state reached after running through all of the actions in the sequence is evaluated with a heuristic function, and the given value becomes the fitness of the individual. In this case, the heuristic function simply aims to maximize the game score obtained by the agent, prioritizing winning game states and avoiding losing game states. Based on these values, the population is then sorted, and the best individual is promoted directly to the next generation through elitism. The population is then modified with various genetic operators in order to obtain a new population of the same size as we had originally. This process is repeated until the budget is spent. In our case, this is set to 1,000 simulations with the forward model. And finally, the first action of the best sequence at the end of this evolutionary process is actually played in the game. And then everything repeats in the next game tick. Many parameters control this whole process, But for this work, we are interested in those that most affect one iteration, thus those included in this part right here. Let's look at them a little bit more closely. We have 5 parameters that will be automatically adjusting during playing this work with some dependencies. As you can see, they are displayed in a tree structure. The genetic operator parameter controls which operators are applied to generate the offspring. If crossover is used, the left branch only is explored and new individuals are not mutated. If mutation is used, then the right branch is explored instead, and each individual in the population is mutated once to create the next generation. Alternatively, we can use both, in which case individuals are created through crossover first, and then each of them are mutated as well. Selection is the process of selecting the parents in case crossover is used. 3 different types are available. Roulette, which selects individuals with probabilities directly proportional to their fitness. Rank, which first ranks individuals based on their fitness in descending order and selects them with probabilities directly proportional to their rank, aiming to minimize the impact of large differences in fitness. And Tournament, which randomly chooses a subset of the population and then the best amongst these is selected. The selection type chosen is repeated twice so that 2 parents are selected. Next, these 2 individuals, in this case the red and the blue ones, are crossed to obtain offspring, that is, combining the genes from the 2 different parents to obtain a new individual. 3 options are available here as well. Uniform crossover randomly selects genes from the parents with equal probabilities. 1-point crossover randomly finds an index in the individual and chooses the first part, so up until that index from one parent and the second part from the other. And 2-point crossover finds 2 indexes to alternatively choose the sections from the parents. In our implementation, one individual is randomly discarded, so only one new individual is actually created from any one crossover operation. Mutation is the process of modifying some genes in an individual to new random values. We have 5 options here to select which genes are actually modified. Uniform mutation modifies all genes, each with probability 1/L, where L is the length of the sequence. So on average, we expect to mutate 1 gene per individual, but this could vary up and down. 1-bit mutation modifies exactly 1 randomly chosen gene, and 3-bit mutation modifies 3 randomly chosen genes. Softmax mutation uses the softmax equation to bias the gene selection towards the beginning of the individual, which causes the largest perturbance in phenotype, or the actual behavior of the agent in the environment, as the overall path the agent takes through the level would be most different if the beginning of that path changes. And lastly, diversity mutation changes the least visited gene to its least visited value to promote exploration of all genes and their values. The last parameter is the mutation transducer, which can only be enabled or disabled. If enabled, this parameter causes the genes to be changed to the previous action in the sequence instead of a new random one. So uniform 1-bit and 3-bit mutation would produce something like this now, with actions being repeated. This is meant to address the jitteriness observed in many of these general agents, which often choose different directions to go in at every game tick, especially in environments with sparse rewards. Now the agent is more likely to repeat the same action several times and thus choose a direction and actually stick to it. As a recap, these are the parameters that we're looking at: the genetic operator, the selection type, crossover type, mutation type, and mutation transducer. So how does automatically modifying these actually fit into the algorithm? Well, rolling horizon looked something like this before. Now, before modifying the population for the next generation, we ask the tuner to provide the parameters to be used for this particular iteration. The rest of the loop works the same, but after evaluating this new population, we return the value to the tuner as feedback for the quality of the suggested parameters. While rolling horizon attempts to maximize the fitness of the individuals, the sequences that lead to the highest score, the tuner attempts to give those parameters which lead to the highest fitness improvement from one generation to the next. We use 5 different methods to adjust the parameters. First, we have random. For each of the different parameters, this method randomly picks one valid value, in order to form the set of parameters for an iteration. It does not use the feedback of the rolling horizon population improvement, but we do gather those statistics for post-processing and further analysis. Second, we have a multi-armed bandit. Similarly, this method chooses a value for each of the parameters. However, this uses statistics on how many times each value for each parameter was chosen and what was the value returned, so that it balances between exploring those values least explored and exploiting those values which appear to lead to the best results. Third, we have naive Monte Carlo. This builds upon the previous method seen on the left side, which is applied with probability epsilon. More often, however, it will instead choose to use a global multi-armed bandit instead, which will look at complete sets of parameter values using the statistics gathered through all previous samples. Fourth, we have a genetic algorithm. Here, individuals are represented by sets of parameters, and they are each evaluated as previously seen through one rolling horizon iteration. Once all individuals in the population have been evaluated, the best mu individuals are selected, which will be used to generate offspring through uniform crossover or through one-bit mutation, with some probability for each method. This results in a new population, and the process is then repeated. And finally, the last tuner is the N-Tuple Bandit evolutionary algorithm, or N-TBA, which again uses an evolutionary algorithm which evaluates one solution at a time and uses the value returned to update an internal fitness model. For example, this individual will put one entry into the 3 tuple records with its corresponding value and 3 other entries for each parameter 1 tuple with its chosen parameter value and returned feedback value. From this solution, several neighbors are generated through one-bit mutation, and the statistics in the model are used to approximate the value of all of these new individuals, using a UCB value similar to the multi-armed bandit and naive Monte Carlo tuners. The neighbor with the highest value is chosen as the next solution to be evaluated, and the process repeats. So let's see how this did in action. The link here includes more results, log summaries, and code to obtain the plots and tables from the paper. First, we'll look at the win rates obtained by the tuned agents. Here we see a plot with win rates in each of the games tested, 1 bar per tuning method, and with rolling horizon state-of-the-art results in green. It's important to note that the state-of-the-art results are the best results obtained by any previous rolling horizon variant and not a single algorithm, as is our case. The first thing to note here is that the tuned agents perform very similarly to each other with quite small differences, which are not significant. There are a few games where the results are on par with the state-of-the-art, generally high win rates games. But there are also some in which some of these agents perform even better. Some highlights are Butterflies and Sequest, in which the random tuner achieves the highest performance. These are stochastic games with very dynamic environments in which it appears to be beneficial for the agent to be switching its parameters often. A similar peak can be seen in Wait for Breakfast, a game about finding the right seat and waiting for food to be delivered. Very simple in concept, but not always the easiest to get right for these general players. And we can also see first win rates in Dig Dug, a game with a large and complex environment, showcasing different navigation, puzzle, and obstacles avoidance tasks. The variation introduced by the change in parameters helps these agents solve this problem, although more of such instances are needed in order to be able to analyze its performance and discover the key to success in these very difficult problems. Next, we looked at what parameters were favored by the tuning methods, as this can give further insight into what works and what doesn't in the algorithm. Showcased here are 2 of the most chosen combinations as the best across all games. therefore the highest agreement amongst the tuners as to which parameters actually work best together. In both of these, we observe the combination of softmax mutation with the mutation transducer enabled, which is a trend in several other games. We measured the consistency in recommendations across all tuners and observed naive Monte Carlo to be the most consistent, while the genetic algorithm was the least. The NMC tuner was on average worse performing, though, suggesting that variation is actually beneficial when higher win rates are targeted, although the difference was not really significant, and thus we have no strong evidence in this direction. If we look at the games individually, no two tuners recommended the same combination of parameters for any of them, but there were some partial agreements in two tuples observed, as mentioned previously, with the softmax mutation and the mutation transducer. And looking at the individual parameters, there were some clear preferences in some cases for particular values. Most interestingly, we note that no tuner valued softmax mutation very highly in isolation, although it appears in several best 5-tuple recommendations. 1-bit mutation is preferred instead on average. We further note that the mutation genetic operator was preferred by most tuners, while crossover only was deemed the worst option. And if we look at specific examples of parameter values in specific games, we can observe the difference in the tuner's thinking process, as well as an interesting deep or steep increase after only a few game ticks. This suggests that the initialization methods could be improved for all of the tuners. Not all of them converge in the given time for a game either. The naive Monte Carlo tuner is a good example shown here in blue. So playing long games with more information and more time to adapt to the specific games and scenarios could show an overall boost in performance. To summarize, we automatically adjusted parameters for rolling horizon evolutionary algorithm during play with several. We found that win rates of the tuned agents are comparable with the hand-picked rolling horizon state-of-the-art results, surpassing it in several games even, thus more general as a single algorithm. The performance of the optimization method was very similar, although the random and the N-Tuple Bandit evolutionary algorithm stood out as better. No significant differences were observed, however. From the parameter analysis, we noticed the combination of the softmax mutation with the mutation transducer was the most beneficial in many cases. However, if dependencies are ignored, 1-bit mutation was individually better, as was only using mutation to generate individuals, with the mutation transducer still enabled. Lastly, we saw several win rates in very difficult problems such as Dig Dug, which we aim to investigate further, obtaining more data points of such winning games and analyzing the resulting statistics could offer important information on how to tackle these very difficult problems. And in general, playing longer or more complex games with more iterations for the algorithm could give more statistics and more accurate performance checks and possibly more significant differences in the methods used. The tuners can further be investigated and analyzed in more depth, as well as trying different options with Bayesian optimization as an example kindly suggested by a reviewer. Even more so, the choice of tuner and the parameters of the tuners themselves could be optimized for a many-level hierarchical optimization problem. And lastly, the fitness function for rolling horizon evaluations could be improved, and things such as the average or standard deviation of fitnesses in a population be considered. Not to mention that the parameter space for the algorithm is much larger than that explored here, and many more interesting insights could be given by larger scale optimization. The paper itself and full details of our methods can be found at the link attached, and you can contact me or any of the authors for any questions you might have. Thank you for watching.